flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Reckless speculation.
Oh, that sounder can mean only one thing. It's Tuesday, bonus scoop time. Zolgad, Declan, and of course, Darren Doogie Wolfson, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, and also Scoop Podcast fame, our Scoop Meister. And Darren, it is NBA Draft Week. Thursday is the NBA Draft. Wolves slated to draft 19th. Plenty of reckless speculation and scoopage to get to on this. I want to start you off with this one. Your reaction to the news on Monday. Shams of The Athletic reporting that the Wolves, just very briefly reporting, just like a sentence, the Wolves are sniffing around Atlanta's Clint Capella. What can you tell us?
Well, I mean, I think they have had dialogue with Atlanta. Happy Tuesday, by the way, Judd. Good to see you, Declan, as well. Mm-hmm. I'm positive, Judd, they've had dialogue with Atlanta, just like they've had dialogue with a number of teams. I did have somebody directly involved with me with the situation tell me to not bet on Clint Capella landing here with the Wolves. So it's great fodder. The Wolves are casting a pretty wide net. I was told they've planted many, many seeds. In fact, I'll read verbatim what somebody over at Mayo Clinic Square told me. Let me see if I can find the text message. I will tell you verbatim what somebody told me yesterday. There's a lot going on.
Okay.
All right.
So that means, between some draft workouts, there's another one today, by the way. Like, that's how diligent the Wolves are being. They have more prospects in today. They're also doing a Zoom with Branham, Malachi Branham from Ohio State, who's not, I don't think, is going to be there at pick 19. So that just tells you the kind of diligence the Wolves are doing. Now, they could always move up for Branham if they wanted to. They tried to get Branham in for a workout. The schedules just didn't match. If you're Branham's representation, you're looking at it and saying, my client's not getting to pick 19. Why should I have him fly to Minnesota, go through a workout, an interview, a physical examination? Like, I don't need to do that to my client. That's a trip that is not necessary. But he is going to conduct a Zoom interview with the Wolves today. So that just tells you how detailed they are being, how busy they are. But in terms of trade dialogue, like, my understanding is they've talked to a number of teams, but specifically with Atlanta, again, I was told by somebody directly involved, do not bet on Clint Capella landing with the Wolves.
Interesting stuff. All right, what can you tell us, too, about how the draft process for this franchise has changed and maybe been backed up a bit, too? Because Tim Conley, who came aboard, introductory press conference 2 weeks back now, I think officially named 3 weeks back. So how much did that change things? Not that there aren't people with the Wolves who are immersed in the draft process, but when you bring in a new Pobo, I'm guessing some of the thought process has to change.
Well, sure. Then you think about Matt Lloyd, who, semantics, we can debate. I guess by title he's the number 3, but his responsibilities are far different in many ways than Sachin Gupta's. Matt Lloyd has a deep scouting background. So you bring him in from the Orlando Magic. Now, I will say when Tim was still with the Denver Nuggets, they conducted some pre-draft, whether it was interviews. They had David Roddy in for a visit. It was more an interview, not necessarily a workout, but Connolly was pretty knee-deep in pre-draft work when he was with the Nuggets. The one thing Connolly missed was he was not at the Combine. So you think about all those face-to-face interviews. The Wolves interviewed, over a dozen prospects for 25 minutes in Chicago. There were different pro days while the Combine was going on, then the scrimmages. So, that was a busy time in Chicago. Well, Connolly was still trying to figure out, okay, do I take this Minnesota offer? Do I go back to Denver? So he missed the Combine, but, you can catch up. I mean, you can watch film. They've brought in a lot of these guys, so a lot of those question marks that Tim might have had, I feel have been answered with all the prospects they've brought in the last couple weeks. Then you think about, Gianluca Pascucci, whose option on his contract not being exercised. The Wolves told him to hit the road immediately. He was big on scheduling these pre-draft workouts. In fact, he represented the Wolves at the Portsmouth pre-draft invitational going back a couple months. Then they kick him to the curb, right? He's gone. Then Zarko Durasic took over scheduling a lot of these draft workouts. So Zarko Durasic took over a lot of the responsibility that Gianluca Pascucci had. But otherwise, Judd, like, I don't have every single name that's been in since mid-May, but I bet I have about 85% of the names, maybe even 90%. Like, I'm not quite sure there's another team that's brought in as many prospects as the Wolves. Now, the comeback to that is, well, yeah, they should bring in a lot, right? When you have picks 19, 40, 48, and 50. When you have 4 picks in this draft, I would have to look. Does anybody else have as many as 4 picks?
I don't
Now,
know.
there are teams with multiple first-rounders. You know, like Orlando has 3 of the top 35 picks. Oklahoma City has 2 picks in the top 12. They have at least 3 picks. But I don't know if anybody has... Well, I don't know if anybody has 5. Maybe one other team has 4. I'd have to look at that. But point is, the Wolves have as many draft picks as just about anyone. So they should be diligent in their work. But the Wolves have brought in so many guys. I know Alondis Williams, a guard from Wake Forest, is among the prospects in today. So even 48 hours to go, the Wolves are still doing a lot of homework.
I've got some questions about Jalen Duran. Do you expect the Wolves, first of all, I guess, Dukes, to stay at 19? And second of all, would a kid like that intrigue them?
Well, he should intrigue them. I think he'd be a really nice fit next to Cat. Like, I saw him play at IMG Academy. Big fan. You know, and it was a roller coaster year at Memphis. I don't see how he gets below pick 11.
Right.
Now, maybe he does. You know, that's the popular spot, the sweet spot for these mock drafts in New York there. Late lottery. But maybe he slides a little bit. But, like, what ammo are you putting on the table, Judd, to move up? Who's willing to move back? I'll also say a lot of people will tell you, not just draft pundits, but people within the league in these front offices will tell you, there's not a whole lot of difference between picks 12 and 35 to 40. So does it make a whole lot of sense to give up whatever the asset is, to give up an asset to move up? Now, I guess if you target one specific guy, as far as I know, Duran has not been to town, but I'm sure they have the book on him, right? I mean, that's what they have their security director doing, others in the front office, making a lot of phone calls, talking to a lot of people, you know, learning about, you know, the character of these guys. They can watch a ton of film, you know, going back to when Duran was in high school. They can have the book the last 2 to 3 years on Duran, who right now has an NBA body. That kid looks like he's 25 years old, not a teenager, or maybe he's 20. But point is, like, that is a man-child. I really, really like him. I think he'd be an excellent fit next to Cat. But you would have to move up, and I just don't know, like, Josh Okogie is not getting you up there. Like, are you giving up Jalen Noel, Naz Reid? Is some team willing to do that? I don't know if I necessarily see the fit on moving up. I think there would be a better chance either they just stay at 19 or they outright move the pick, right? That they get out from underneath pick 19, that there might be a chance to either acquire maybe multiple future picks or that there's a veteran you can bring in some package where 19 goes out.
To your point, have you heard rumblings, Dukes, about guys on the current roster who might be being shopped or might be being dangled, at least in conversations? Like, is that list beginning to emerge where it's clear that there's a guy or 2 or 3 beyond D'Lo that Tim Connelly would be willing to move?
Verbatim from somebody inside. Anyone not named Edwards and Towns will listen to. Anyone, again, not named Edwards and Towns will listen to. Now,
interesting.
Like, I don't see a Jaden McDaniels trade happening. I've been saying that for a while. I see Jaden McDaniels moving forward as part of a big 3 with Cat, with Ant. Now, if you're moving Jaden McDaniels, you're bringing back a legit all-star. But the point is, unless your name is Anthony Edwards or Karl Anthony Towns, it's a very interesting time. Now, if we were doing, a pie chart of who could go ahead. A percent chance, I mean, put D'Lo and Beasley near the top of that list. Jaden McDaniels would be a very, very tiny sliver, right? So, we can certainly rank guys, but unless you're Ant or Cat, you absolutely could be traded in the next few weeks.
If we play this out then, McDaniels, a guy like that who clearly has a bright future, looks to be a really good player. What type of trade, like what would be the blockbuster? What would be the trade where they would go down a list of guys that they probably like, and make a trade? Because it's interesting that there's not a bigger list of guys who they're like, okay, no, right? So like if we were to explore the path of a guy like Jaden McDaniels, what are we talking about there?
Well, I mean, I think you're looking at like Jaden plus more, where you're getting back.
Right.
Like, let's see what happens with Bradley Beal. Hypothetically, right? Like, I don't see the Wolves landing Bradley Beal, but Bradley Beal is on record saying he's made a decision about his future, just isn't ready to announce what that decision is. Now, to me, if it was a stone cold lock that he's re-upping with the Washington Wizards, wouldn't you just say that? So that's where there's a little bit of doubt. But, like, a lot of his actions going back over a year have suggested he wants to be with the Wizards beyond next season. But that's the kind of move you'd be looking at, right? Where Utah, what happens with Utah? They still need a head coach. Does Danny Ainge, decide to blow things up to some extent?
That's right.
Right? So if Donovan Mitchell went, now I'm not suggesting Donovan Mitchell would land here. I think he would land elsewhere. But that would be the idea, that you'd bring in a player of that ilk. Now, McDaniels isn't getting you that player singularly. That's where you're looking at giving up. You got to make the money match, right, with some of these guys. So I suppose D'Angelo is an expiring contract. You're looking at, probably another young player, whether that's Jalen Noel, Naz Reid, if some team was enamored with either of those guys, maybe both, right? So it would be a combination. But Jaden McDaniels would be the focal point of said package. If you're the opposing team, you'd be saying, okay, yeah, we needed to match money, so we took this big contract, this expiring contract. But the guy we love, the reason we gave up our star, well, he wanted out. He wasn't going to sign here long term. But the reason we made this trade with Minnesota is we love Jaden McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels is highly coveted. The Wolves always get calls on Jaden McDaniels. I know a lot of people in the league that love that kid.
Okay. So that leads to my next question, because I sense that Connolly is very smart. I sense that he probably would move methodically if possible. Like, I don't think he's going to rush into a trade. I sense that Finch is the same way. Conversely, I sense that Laurie and A-Rod are probably guys who look at this thing and say, we probably should have won the first round against the Grizzlies. We've got a good team here, and we're not the most patient guys. What do you think the mandate is, or the feeling is, about trying to get this team to get over the hump as soon as possible? Or do you think it's going to default to Connolly and Finch to say, well, we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet?
Yeah, the latter. That there's not any sort of verbal mandate. But I'll continue to harp on this, Judd. The Denver Nuggets are getting healthy. The Los Angeles Clippers are getting healthy. Will the Lakers continue to be this bad? Now, hey, LeBron may continue to miss some games. Anthony Davis has a history of breaking down. So neither of those guys may be capable of playing 75 games next season. But there is a thought. Are they going to be this bad again next year? New Orleans gets back Zion Williamson. They were below the Wolves. They now have a full year of CJ McCollum. There's a thought that New Orleans is ready to make a jump. That the Wolves, if they run this thing back, status quo, you're at best in the play-in tournament. You're not jumping up to the 6th seed.
Right.
So the roster needs work. We've been saying that for a while. The roster is incomplete. Smallest roster in the NBA, horrible defensive rebounding team. That's where, on the surface, Clint Capella makes a lot of sense, right? Elite defensive rebounder. Now, some people might say, no, it doesn't make sense because we don't want Cat playing the 4. That Cat has to play the 5. Cat has defensive flexibility. There are certain things you can do. Elston Turner's a really smart defensive mind. There are different concepts that you can concoct that Cat is not going to be put on an island chasing around small ball 4s around the perimeter. There are ways to work around that. So on the surface, Capella makes sense. But I was told Atlanta's looking to do some other stuff. Clint Capella has a really tight relationship with Trae Young. Not that he's untouchable, but that if they move Capella, it's probably for a bigger move, some other large move. Like, I don't think they're moving Capella for Malik Beasley and a draft pick. That's what I'm alluding to.
Doogie, what's up with the latest with John Collins? The Vikings. The Wolves have had dialogue with him before, and obviously it just sounds like he could also be dangled again at the trade deadline. Number one, I guess, two-part question for you. Did your gut tell you that John Collins is probably out of Atlanta? And two, do you think the Wolves can be a suitor for him?
Well, yes. I do think, Declan, Atlanta is going to do something. Go to the Eastern Conference Finals 2 seasons ago. Go belly up this past season. I guess it could have been worse. At least they made the play-in. But, and they won the play-in, right? So they advanced to the playoffs, but went belly up in that first round against Miami. So Atlanta is going to do something, and I think it's more likely it's Collins, not Capella. Now, they also have Gallinari, who's only got a partial guarantee, final year of his deal. So Gallinari is a really interesting trade chip. But, to me, Atlanta, I've talked for a while about Indiana being fascinating. And now, we've seen more, national steam on Miles Turner, Malcolm Brogdon. But Atlanta's another one of those teams that I'm fascinated to see how things play out. If I had to bet, Declan, yeah, it's way more likely Collins goes than Capella. I don't have a strong sense right this second that the Wolves, that Connolly is all in on Collins. That's a good amount of money. Is he worth that? Coming off an injury. So there are some medical concerns, although there's medical concerns with a lot of guys. That's one I'm going to dig on a little bit further, Declan, that it's a fair question. I can make a case that he could fit in pretty nicely. Now, what are you giving up to get him? See, that's still the elephant in the room, right? That okay, Atlanta decides, okay, we're moving Collins. They get, 6 to 8 to 10 suitors? Maybe 10 is a bit aggressive, but multiple for sure, right? Not just Minnesota. So, what do the Wolves have to entice Atlanta to say, okay, Minnesota, your offer trumps Portland, trumps San Antonio's, trumps you name the other teams that could be in on John Collins. That's where I think it's a tough match. But yeah, there has been. I mean, you're right to note previous interest. Certainly Gerson was a fan of John Collins. I can tell you that much. But others that remain in the front office, I know, are fans of John Collins. So that's one I'll continue to keep an eye on. I don't have a strong sense on where Connolly stands on him, though.
Odds that we see a Wolves trade that excites people Thursday.
How do you define excites? Because I think we're going to see some action. I do.
A second-round pick sold to San Antonio.
Well,
so like an actual player trade or a draft pick trade that you say, wow, that's at least intriguing, not, big deal, I don't care.
Even with the 3 second-round picks, they would take all sorts of heat if they sell a pick. Flip sold a pick, with Glenn's approval. What year was that? Was that the Giannis draft? Was that 14? Wasn't 15, wasn't the cat draft. But the Wolves sold the pick. I believe it was 14.
The Shabazz draft for them?
Yeah, I think it was the Shabazz draft, right? The Gorgie Jang draft. And, he took a good amount of heat. In fact, I remember having a back and forth with Flip where he put me on a timeout, a text message timeout. He's like, I'm not texting you back for 24 hours. You're on a text timeout.
Oh, wow.
That's the kind of relationship we had. It was great. Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Because I asked the question that draft night, right? So it was a logical, legit question, but he was mad that I asked it in front of everybody. He's like, you should have just asked me privately. I'm like, no, that was your press availability. No guarantee that I was going to track you down later that night. And it was germane to that moment, right? I don't remember if I was writing, broadcasting, whatever I was doing, but it was a talker in that moment. Yeah. I couldn't wait until 1:30 in the morning for one of those late Flip calls. Yeah, so anyway, he put me on a text message timeout. But I remember him taking all sorts of heat, 8 years ago for doing that. So, even with the 3 second-round picks, they would take, I think, at least for me, you're not in a position to be selling picks. Take a stash guy, right? Point, stash him overseas. But you can't be.
My point is percentage odds on a real trade being made by the Wolves, a basketball trade.
Yeah, the seeds have been planted, right? The net that they've cast is wide. I can't reiterate that enough. Just so often, I just know from covering this league for so long, most trades talked about never happen. Right. I think they're going to make a trade. How about that? But it may be as simple as, okay, here's 48 and 50. We're moving up to somewhere else in the second round, right? Some guy they like falls.
Sure.
It may just be something along those lines. Or they trade 48 or 50 for a second-round pick next year. Right? Like, a trade like that would make sense. You don't need 3 second-round picks. Right. Just push that second-round pick, have multiple second-round picks in a later draft in 23 or 24. So that's where I think they're going to do something. I don't know if it's going to be something necessarily that, excites the fan base. So to use your word, excites. Yeah. But, just know, all these guys are on the table. I'm sure Pat Riley would love to have Pat Beverly in Miami. I'm sure of that, right? I know a lot of teams, I'm telling you, that would love to have Jaden McDaniels. Jalen Noel wasn't thrilled with his role last year, right? Was used a lot, then wasn't used. You don't think he would welcome a change of scenery? So, there's a lot of things, right? But that doesn't mean that Tim, who's very calculated, is going to strike this soon. Let's not forget about the ability to have maximum flexibility 1 year from now. Yes. Now, these two things can be, happening at the same time, right? Where you can make a move now and still maintain that flexibility a year from now. So that would be something I would keep an eye on. I just don't think you throw in the trash having that maximum flexibility next summer. I really don't.
Chet Holmgren goes where, do you think?
Well, he visited Orlando last week. He visited Oklahoma City. I think it's one of those two. I don't know if it's one or two, though. Orlando's GM met with the media yesterday, the pre-draft media avail, and certainly didn't tip his hat, in any direction. I know Chet would love Orlando. Now, he did a Zoom. I was a part of many people on a Zoom with Chet yesterday. He handled the question the right way, right? That I can't control where I go. He spoke glowingly about Oklahoma City. He spoke glowingly about Orlando. But make no mistake about this. No state income tax. His best friend, Jalen Suggs, he wants to be the number 1 overall pick on Thursday night. I just don't know if Orlando's going him or Jabari Smith. I think in some order, those are your first 2 picks. Then Paolo Banchero goes pick 3. Then we wonder about Sacramento with Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey did a Zoom the other day saying he hasn't had any pre-draft correspondence with the Sacramento Kings. We know Sacramento's having all sorts of trade dialogue with that 4th pick. So that, to me, is where the real intrigue begins. If I had to bet right now, I think Jabari Smith goes 1, Chet Holmgren goes 2. But it's entirely possible Orlando goes Chet, then Jabari goes 2. But I can just tell you, Chet wants to go number 1. And let me get in a shameless plug. Wednesday night, Channel 5, after the hockey game, so the newscast may not start until 10:05, 10:10. But I was over at Chet's mom and dad's house a couple weeks ago, caught up with his high school coach as well. So through the lens of people that know Chet really, really well, I'll have a feature story on Chet Holmgren on Channel 5 on Nightcast Wednesday night, probably approximately 10:25 or so. I'm rooting for him to go to Orlando, right? That's the storyline you want. You want Jalen Suggs with Chet Holmgren. Judd, we have video. We did a story on Jalen Suggs when he was in 6th grade. We were in the gym that day. I went back and watched the video. We don't have the raw video, unfortunately, but I went back and watched the finished product. Yep. There's Chet Holmgren setting a screen for Jalen Suggs. Chet would have been just finishing his 5th grade year. It was after the summer of Jalen's 6th grade year. How cool is that? That these two kids, awesome. They've slept over each other's houses dozens upon dozens of times. They've had, late Thanksgiving gatherings the families have together, all sorts of AAU tournaments. The two families are inseparable. Jalen and Chet are inseparable. How cool would it be, right, to have those two on the same team? So that certainly is what I am rooting for.
And it also reminds us, Doogs, of just how far this state has come in basketball development. I can't tell you, when I was a kid, this didn't happen. Didn't even come close, right? There might be a good player or two here and there. And that was up until, what, Dukes, about 15 years back? And then it just all changed. It's remarkable that we are talking about these two pairing up as high draft picks, both being from here. You occasionally had good prospects. Now, it's like a faucet got turned on, and it's every year we're talking about this cultivation of a group of just outstanding basketball talent from this state.
I love it. I mean, it really went up a notch, the 15 draft, when Tyus Jones, Rashad Vaughn both went in the top 20, right? Or top 25, I guess. Yep. To have 2 first-round picks, one from Robbinsdale Cooper High School, one from Apple Valley High School. Then you think about the Zeke Naji draft with Daniel Oturu, with Trey Jones, with Jericho Sims, who carved out a role with the Knicks. Right now you have this draft, Chet Holmgren, Kendall Brown, David Roddy. Now, Kendall and David may end up going second round. Like, I hope Kendall sneaks into the first round. Cottage Grove native, played a little bit at Eastridge High School. Then he transferred to an academy in Kansas, Sunrise Christian Academy. And that's where some of these kids get lost, just somewhat. I'm knee-deep in this stuff, but maybe to the casual fan, like Gary Trent Jr. plays his senior year out of state. Rashad Vaughn plays his senior year out of state. Kendall Brown plays multiple years out of state. Mm-hmm. So that's a relatively new phenomenon going back, maybe a decade or so. But yes, I mean, no doubt, Judd, that the talent here in the Twin Cities, it's been peaking for a while, but this may be the ultimate, right? When you have a kid that can legitimately go number 1 overall. Absolutely. Right? We've had kids with local connections go number 1. Michael Thompson, not from here, but the former Gopher, was the number 1 pick in the draft. Jalen Suggs last year goes pick 5. So we've had guys go really high. But to have a Minneapolis kid, Minnehaha Academy's own, go 1 or 2, it's really, really cool. He's going to have a number of family and friends at the Barclays Center there in Brooklyn. Heck, how about when he was in elementary school, Judd? One of his teams also featured Tyrell Terry, who went on to De La Salle High School, played at Stanford for a year, then was an early second-round pick. That's another kid from the last couple years. Dallas let him go, got picked up by the Memphis Grizzlies at the end of the year. But like an elementary school team with Tyrell Terry, Jalen Suggs, Chet Holmgren. That's then you think about the Travis family, Reed Travis, who's made a lot of money overseas, had the good run at Stanford, then at Kentucky, had a number of NBA pre-draft workouts, played summer league. It's not, the path that everybody can take, right? But you can make good money overseas. Reed Travis has made good money, and he's been a productive player overseas. The Travis family has a close relationship with the Holmgren family. So, like, you think about a lot of these kids, just the relationships go back a long, long time. So, yeah, it's fantastic.
Final scoop, sir. Close us out.
I've been knee-deep in NBA, Judd, and I can tell you about Little League. How about my son's Little League team? They had no choice. They're playing in a tournament in Hopkins. Somebody made the call, hey, let's play last night. Like, I'm sitting there looking at the ump who's sweating his you-know-what off. I'm looking at the catcher, super uncomfortable. I'm thinking, what the heck are we doing? Then, of course, it was one of those games. You couldn't make this up. Like, you just knew, right, when the heat index is 103, right, that the game was going to take a while, right? That there were going to be a lot of foul balls, which there were. Can't control that, but there were. Kid hits a foul ball, clearly goes off the fence behind the home plate ump. He has to go talk to the field ump just to make sure that it went off the fence. It's like, come on, bud. And two old guys, so that was a waste of 4 minutes. Because our catcher caught it off the fence. But clearly, dead ball, right? Ball hits fence, dead ball. Catcher caught the ball just to throw it back to the pitcher. And the ump had to think, wait, is that an out? Did he just catch that? And it clearly went off the fence.
In New York, you got to go, you got to put on the headset, you got to get that right.
Oh.
Anyway. Okay.
And of course, I'm bitter because my son's team got 10 run last night, right? So, I have to sit out there and watch his team get their butts kicked. So, yeah, it was one of those nights. So, I'm immersed in Little League baseball right now, NBA. Which, that's my life this time of the year. I am excited for this Twins Guardians series. Mm-hmm. I won't be there tonight. I know you'll be there, Judd. Declan, I assume with your season ticket holder status, you'll be at one of these games the next 3 days. Yeah, tomorrow. There you go. Nice. So, I am looking forward to that series. And also looking forward to when Trade Talk picks up. It's not hot and heavy yet, but, you don't know that Carlos Correa is going to be here next year, right? So you got to go all in.
Yes.
Got to go all in. I will say on Twins prospect Matt Canarino, I'm just reminded, I texted with Matt the other day, there was a little hiccup in him getting his MRI results back. So some is it elbow or forearm? I got to remember the exact injury. It's the same injury he had last year. One of the Twins' top 10 prospects. He's at AA Wichita, 24 and a half years old. Right? So it's like, come on, Twins. If he's healthy, move him up. Like, I don't know why he's rotting away at AA at 24 and a half years old. But anyway, he is still awaiting MRI results. He did say the injury feels a lot better. Now, that doesn't mean the MRI is going to check out just fine. We wait and see on the MRI. But, yeah, not good because Emmanuel Rodriguez, top Twins prospect and outfielder for Fort Myers, meniscus tear. So he needs to undergo surgery. You know, and you start thinking about the Twins being able to outbid other teams, that they'll be in on Frankie Montas, but can they outbid some other team looking for a starting pitcher? It's not helpful when a lot of their prospects either are injured or performing poorly like Austin Martin.
Absolutely. All right, sir. We will talk to you on Thursday with more scoops, okay?
Okay. See you, boys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Darren.